Hello and welcome back to our million-part series about the Bible. If you missed us last time, we covered the birth of Jesus, the Magi visit, the significance of the Magi, why they were there, all those kind of things. We also introduced Herod. We jump into it this time with the Magi just leaving after worshiping Jesus and giving him the gifts. And they're greeted with an angel who says, hey, make sure you go back a completely different way. Make sure you don't see Herod, because you'll all be in a ton of danger if this occurs. So Herod realizes at this point, after a little bit of time, that they're not coming back, that he's been tricked by these guys. He's furious. So if you recall, he's terrified. He's killed his sons for the same reason. He's terrified of a new king of the Jews that will take over his kingdom. And he's going to do everything in his power to make sure that that doesn't happen. So his idea was, if you recall, when he asked the wise men, when did you see this light? That was all an attempt to figure out exactly how old this baby would be. So he plays it safe. Says every male baby under 2 in Bethlehem has to die. At this point, an angel comes to Joseph once again with this knowledge that he needs to get out immediately. And he says, wake up and go now. So it's middle of the night. He gets this. It was get up now and head off. And at this point, Joseph has seen these angels so often, you imagine he goes to bed every night with a notepad on his chest, just waiting. Hey, tell what's gonna come. The angel phone that he's received. So he's told to go to Egypt at this point, and during this time, the Roman Empire did include Egypt, but the jurisdiction of Herod was exclusive to their region, so Herod had no control over there and was just focused on this area around Bethlehem, which is very interesting. So if you recall, this isn't the first time that we've had biblical characters that head to Egypt when they're in trouble. Abraham had fled there many years before this, when there was a famine. He had a whole bunch of trouble with the Pharaoh, if you recall, a very, very tough situation that he and his wife got into. Jacob's family obviously went for similar reasons during a famine. When Joseph was running things over in Egypt. So there was plenty of that, and that leads you to the Exodus, which is the 700 years after they come into Egypt and they're enslaved. You ask, why would God want them to be enslaved for that long? Isn't that a terrible thing? Well, when they came and they were worshiping statues of Baal and doing all the pagan sacrifices, if it led them to, and their people, to an ultimate salvation, it's something of a small price to pay. So Jesus goes with Mary and Joseph to Egypt, and this is what always strikes me as extraordinary, is why was this family with very modest means, very not a lot of money, not a lot of wealth, why were they able to do this? And if you recall back, you have the Magi giving them all these gifts, these spices that are easily tradable, and that allowed them to be able to live there for all that time, to make the hundreds of miles journey to get there, and would eventually lead to Jesus being saved from the wrath of Herod. It is a bit of a contrasting point from the 700 years of slavery. We're pointed to this idea that all these babies did die in Bethlehem at this point. And yes, God, would you rather that not happen? All right, obviously, it's terribly sad. But would it have been better if they didn't die and then every single soul throughout history was unable to eventually be with God and to have salvation and have those sins. So it shows something of this God's eye view of things that humans are always going to be incapable of seeing when a negative event happens, the long-term implications and what the plan is. You look at it, and this is the problem of evil kind of thing. Now, you'll look at it, and it'll seem like the worst thing ever, but you don't understand the big picture of thousands and thousands of years at once, in the same way that God did. In the same way that God does. So the angel contacts Joseph once again. He says, hey, long time no speak. Maybe a year, maybe 2 years. Herod is dead. Jesus can come back. So they end up going back on home. Now, it's impossible to read this story and not see a ton of parallels to Exodus. So Moses originally fled from Egypt at 40 after killing that abusive slaveholder. Jesus fled to Egypt. Kind of the reversal. The Pharaoh had every male child killed by being thrown into the Nile. Herod had every male child killed in Bethlehem. Moses' mom saved her son by putting her into the Nile, or him into the Nile. Jesus' mom saved her son by crossing the Nile. So in Exodus, the Pharaoh dies so Moses can return to free his people. In the story, Herod dies so Jesus can return to free his people from the bondage of sin. And an angel told both that the person seeking your life is dead to perceive that, whether it was the Pharaoh or Herod again. So there are some really interesting parallels that they're drawing back on in this story. So this story is much of what you hear about Jesus's young childhood days. When we jump back into it, we see him a bit older and the true journey that he goes on. The establishment of his ministry begins. So that's some really exciting stuff, and we'll jump back into that next time. But thank you very much for joining us. Make sure to like, comment, and share, and subscribe, and all those different things. And we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.